Okay, let's get started.
We just were like it passing.
All right, I'm going to call the committee of the whole meeting for Tuesday, July 25th to order. It is 7:30 PM. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Rosado?
Here.
Atack?
Here.
Stark?
Here.
Chanson?
Here.
Wolf?
Here.
Salvati?
Here.
Brown?
Here.
O'Brien?
Here.
Callahan?
Here.
Meitzler? Mueller? Ewer? Saron? And McFadden.
Okay, we do have a quorum. Next item is item 2, items removed, added, or changed. I know of none. Do we have anything, Laura?
No.
Okay. Item 3, matters from the public for items that are not on the agenda. So if anybody wants to address us for an item that is not on the agenda, please come up to the podium. Okay, let the record reflect Alderman Saron has also joined the meeting. Item 4 is Resolution 17-83-R awarding a downtown improvement grant to John Happel at 129 South Batavia Avenue. Alderman Atack, do you have this?
Yeah, so John Happel has applied for a downtown improvement grant. This is the old, this was the building owned by Stash Barber,
Formerly owned by Stasha.
formerly owned by Stash, and it looks as though he is going to be doing a really good job of making all the improvements that the city had hoped Stash would make way back when. So I think he'll be up to code, right?
Yes.
Okay, so he
Plan.
has asked to complete and provided a list of items including electrical improvements, plumbing, fire alarm, HVAC, and some American with Disability improvements. He's looking for us to provide grant funds in the amount of $20,000 or 50% of the total cost, which is $43,500, whichever is less. And it looks like he's also putting an additional $55,000.
Yes, this fall he's currently putting in about $55,000 in exterior improvements. That's been ongoing.
Well, it sounds like he's doing a great job to the building.
Yes, he's addressing code issues as well as making the building essentially market-ready for occupancy. In fact, he's got a tenant proposed for the ground floor, which he can talk more about it. Actually, John's in the audience to make some comments. And just to reiterate what the alderman said is that there's a request for $20,000 or 50% of the cost of the stated improvements, whichever is less. The building dates back to about 1903. It's a 2-story commercial building, mid-block between Main Street and First. And again, the plan is to bring in a tenant in the ground floor, and so that's great too, get occupancy on the ground floor, another reason to come downtown, kind of an eclectic use for that block, which is pretty eclectic between, services and retail and the Beards Garden. It's kind of a neat block as it's evolving. So Mr. Happel is here to answer any questions, and I'd introduce him now.
Thank you for entertaining my request. We're super excited about the building. We purchased it a couple years ago, and just looking forward to renovating the whole thing completely. It was a perfect location for my wife's new art studio that she's putting in. I think there's a printout that we gave you guys about what exactly she's doing there, and it actually will be pretty exciting because it brings people into town from all over the country. So that's a pretty exciting thing for downtown. I actually have my business at 150 First Street, and I've been there about 8 years, and pretty excited about being here. And we're both real excited about having our businesses down here. So we're pretty meticulous about restoring everything to the best of our ability. And right now we got a lot of things going on. We completely have renovated the complete tuck pointing of the exterior. We got plans to put a nice porch on the back, and then also the apartments up above are in dire need of a little tender loving care. So that's kind of where we're at with it.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council committee?
I don't have a question for Mr. Apple, but I do of Chris.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just thanks. I mean, I'm certainly supportive of what you're doing here, and I've been watching what you're doing over there, and I think it's great, so I don't have a problem with this application. But I'm just curious, Chris, I mean, in the past, we typically require that we see 2 bids for everything that we're going to be using this grant money for, to make sure that the best price is coming in for what the money used is for. And with the last application, with this one, we didn't see it. We're not seeing any drawings tonight of what we're approving. We're just seeing a description of what we're approving. And like I said, I don't have a problem with what he's doing. He's making quite an investment, but I'm just wondering why we're changing how we're doing this.
Well, we're not changing it, and I appreciate you had a question. Actually, John knows that he's going to be required to have 2 bids. He's shown up a couple of different bids for some components, not all of them, but I told him we wouldn't release any funds until he provides at least 2 bids for each component of the projects. And we just talked about this last week, so he knows that's part of the program. So, and whatever the lower bid will be, that will be what will be subject to the reimbursement.
Okay. I mean, it looks like it's going to end up being that dollar amount, no matter how you look at it, because he's
No,
making such the investment that it's going to add up to be that, but we got to make sure that we see that we're
I
getting the
agree.
best bang for the buck.
And we would do it with if it were our money, and it is our money.
Right.
So, the fact is, he's going to be required to bring 2 bids, and I think he's gotten a bid.
hard at it.
Yeah, it's difficult to find bids on some of the work this time of year, but he knows they're required, and he will be getting them. But that's a good question, and I just didn't include what I do have in the submittal.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing it move forward. I think it's great what you're doing.
As far as any drawings are concerned, though, there is another phase to this project, which is exterior. We'll be replacing a bunch of windows and doing a facade improvement, and there will be not only drawings for that, but that will have to go through historic preservation.
Right.
So you'll be seeing that as well. But that's not subject to this particular grant. We think that will probably be forthcoming, perhaps even in a request for additional funds in 2018. But it's not budgeted for this year, so if it does happen, it'll be next fiscal year.
That was the other question I was going to have for you, Chris, was how are we doing with the budget? This is the second or third request we've seen.
Yeah, it's starting to get tight for the downtown improvement grants. And there's one other one pending. I'm not sure it's going to come through, but that will probably close us out. We're still within budget, and I think the other one will be forthcoming, and based on what's left, they may be limited to a certain amount, but I think the city's doled out the money consistent with the intent of the TIF grant program. I mean, in this particular project, for instance, we had a pretty depreciated building. I'm very excited about the fact that his next phase will be to address the apartments upstairs, because that will bring increment to the property. Right now, you couldn't rent those spaces surprised he rents them at all, frankly, or Stosh did. But you certainly couldn't get market rent for those apartments. So the improvements to those apartments upstairs will, rise the tide for all boats, so to speak, on that block. So we're looking forward to that.
Okay, thank you.
Artie?
Yeah, and interesting for what Mr. Heppel was saying about the people traveling from all across the United States for these. I looked into a lot of those numbers since we're expending public funds for making sure we get some sort of return on investment. And one of the large numbers that stuck out with me right now is the wellness industry and wellness tourism bring in $3.4 trillion for businesses, which the pharmaceutical industry is at $1 trillion. So it's even 2.4 trillion above that. So it's a growing field right now where there's a lot of need for it, and a lot of people are spending their money that way. So I think you're right on as a business venture.
Just one quick question. You said your business is around the corner. What do you do?
My business is Artist Touch. I've been in business for 37 years, right in DuPage County area. I employ I have 26 employees, and we basically do building maintenance for townhome complexes. So we do roughly around 300 buildings a season. So we're pretty busy doing that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Would someone like to make a motion to recommend to council the approval of Resolution 17-83-R awarding such a grant to John Happel?
So moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and I think we should put that on the agenda.
I agree. Okay, so this will go to the next city council meeting, which will be the first Monday in August, correct, Chris?
I believe that's the 6th of, no, is it 7th August? 7th, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, so he'll be here, it's not on the consent, it's on the regular agenda, so we can present it again.
yeah, that'd be
Good,
great.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item is item 5, ordinance 17-46, amending the zoning code regarding temporary signs. This is continued from the last meeting. Alderman Stark.
Sounds good. On July 11th, we reviewed the proposed changes, and of course, we had a long discussion about it. And it was tabled for further discussion till tonight. Staff has reviewed the feedback that we provided and revised the ordinance to do the following. Delay implementation of the ordinance for 60 days from the date the ordinance is passed. It waives the permit fees for temporary and limited duration signs in industrial and commercial district for 1 year from the effective date. And there is a 60-day delay that gives the city the time to implement a simpler permitting process, as we asked them for when we were talking about this, so that it'll involve electronic copies of the permits and attachments. Now, of note is that we have been collecting fees for temporary signs at least since its implementation in 2010, but it didn't cover real estate signs. The revisions would waive all temporary signs, including those we currently collect fees on, which is about $880 a year, and so far $385 thus far this year. So by waiving this, we will be losing revenue for a 1-year time period, so 6 months of this year, 6 months of next year. There was also discussion about waiving permits entirely, and staff does not support that because it would create a permanent loss in revenue, and also it would not give us any way to track those permits and enforce the code. And so by not being able to do that, it would actually increase staff time because we would be having to follow up on violations to signs that randomly appeared. So our alternatives would be to approve ordinance 1746 as revised, approve the amendments to ordinance 1746, do not approve the ordinance 1746, and provide additional or different direction to staff for further action. So the pros are the revisions that were made are a compromise for a simpler permitting process, which is what we all asked for in terms of electronic processing to benefit the sign owners. The ordinance as proposed is mostly the same, and the staff feels it would be enforceable if challenged. If we all remember, this is to bring us in alignment with the Supreme Court of the United States. The cons, the amendment would waive fees for a period of time, increasing the burden on all taxpayers of the city for a private interest, so to the tune of about $900. If the council wishes to waive it entirely, we won't be able to regulate and enforce the temporary sign code. Budget impact, it varies really depending on the number of permits issued. We will lose revenue as well as incur additional staff time for enforcement if permit fees and/or permits are waived. So there's no additional staffing impact. A timeline, we need to get this new sign code in compliance with the Supreme Court ruling as soon as possible. And delaying implementation continues to subject us to a legal challenge, which we all know is not good. So staff recommends that we approve ordinance 1746 as revised, and we have the red line agreement attached to this, or ordinance, and it states what I've just read in terms of the 3 major changes to this. So does anyone have any questions of Scott? Scott, did I leave anything out?
No, I don't think so. I think you covered pretty much, what we believe the concerns were raised by the committee last time, so.
I have one question. Scott, we don't have counsel here tonight, but do you happen to know, I know from a constitutional standpoint, we can't make exemptions for what's said or for groups, but can we make an exemption for actively marketed properties or an action that's being done on that property?
You have to be really careful about making distinctions. I mean, you can make certain things about time, place, and manner distinctions. So you could say, well, we're going to allow for X square feet signs to be up for, so many days or something like that. But I know that that's something that the Realtors Association brought up. I'm not sure that there's any easy way to enforce that, to be honest. I think that's going to be awfully hard for us to try and look and say, okay, yeah, this property is listed or it's not listed. Some places are not listed under MLS. We don't have access to MLS. It would be virtually impossible for us to really figure a way to enforce it under those types of limitations.
But the reality is we don't need to enforce that. These aren't the people we're trying to enforce. I mean, we're kind of piling on, aren't we?
No, I mean, I think we've, if anything, I can say we maybe have been not enforcing the ordinance as we probably should have been in the last years, because we haven't required or been forcible about enforcing it on real estate signs. So they've gotten a pass over the last several years, to be honest.
Right, but our issue and our concerns here don't really revolve around the real estate signs. They revolve around the...
For the most part, no. I mean, they
issues and where they
self-police
are.
themselves a lot, I would say. But, I mean, there are probably some circumstances that, they put up a bigger sign than they should, or, maybe they're not there as long as they should be, or depending on the circumstances. They're, the property's not listed for sale anymore, but they keep the sign up just to let people know that there's something for lease eventually, that kind of thing. So that happens.
Okay.
Marty?
Yeah, just a point of order on the discussion was not tabled. We had a motion and a second on the table for the last time. We did not vote on that, so I tabled my motion. I will withdraw my motion that was previously at the last meeting.
Thank you. Okay, anyone
noted.
else?
I have a question. I noticed that the lobbyist for the organization is in the audience. I had a question for him, actually.
Please state your name for the record.
Alex Finke. Good night, everybody.
I noticed that you were virtually by yourself tonight. Does that mean that the organization is in agreement with the amendments, or they have taken a position on it? I just expected more people to be here tonight.
No, we, I really was, it was a consideration that I thought we talked to death 2 weeks ago. I don't think there was anything more I can really contribute at this point. So no, I gave my my members the night off, and I just came myself. We're not in agreement with all of the proposed amendments.
Would you not consider what's in front of us a compromise?
It's closer. I mean, I can't say it absolutely is better than it was before, but really for the realtors at this point it's just the permitting process. I mean, we would be fine, and I haven't talked to my committee about this, but I would be okay with a simple registration so that staff can track the signs, as long as it wasn't a building permit that required pre-approval. If it was something where a realtor could fill out a form online, send it in, and say, hey, just so you know, I'm putting a sign up here, here's the size, yada, 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 but then can go up literally 5 minutes after submitting it, then can go put the sign up, then that would be acceptable, because that doesn't hurt commerce in any way. There's no slowdown in commerce for pre-approval from staff. That's basically where we would be at. But no, absolutely. I mean, I would be ludicrous to say that this isn't better than what it was. So I would say that staff compromised a little bit for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Scott, is that something that we could do, assuming that the association would recognize that if all the rules weren't followed, the sign would have to come down and be put up again?
Well, we've not done any type of a registration per se. I mean, our registration is the permit system. We would have to look into that, I guess, in more detail. But I would think that's going to be problematic, because an instantaneous permit, it's not like when they order a sign, they don't know that they're ordering a sign. So when they order the sign, they could apply for the permit at the same time. There's a lead time with these types of things anyway. So, I don't see that as being a real burden to them, to be honest, so.
Well, some of the signs are just already there. They're already made, so I don't know, maybe I could see it.
It depends on what it is. I mean, the commercial ones are, they're bigger ones, and they
Yeah.
print them off with, the phone number and the realtor and everything else. So, I mean, some of them, the smaller ones, the 6 square foot ones are exempt. So those aren't a problem at all. It's just the bigger
I
ones.
think some of the bigger ones are already made,
Well, they could be,
so it
but,
could happen pretty fast. I
Mm-hmm.
think, I don't know.
right.
Nick?
I would just, I don't see that this is really solving the problem sign area. We would, but it does get us to the constitutional point that we solve that issue. So I would make a motion that we approve to council that we approve the ordinance with the amendment that we also, that we increase the size of both commercial and industrial to go up to 32 square feet before they need a permit.
Is that an alternative in my, is that so as revised or the amendments or which, because we have 3 choices. We can approve it as revised, we can approve the amendments to it.
Is there still a motion on the table?
Second.
Yeah.
That didn't answer my question.
Yeah.
That answered my motion.
The answer
My
is
question.
no. Mine was B, so it's removed.
It's removed. There's nothing on there.
That's B is gone.
Okay.
B is gone. That's
I would
what
say
made
we just
sure.
That's what I
approve
wanted
this.
clarification
Yes,
on.
because that's still in there, so.
So my motion
Choice
is to
out.
approve the ordinance as Scott has presented with the inclusion that both commercial and industrial go up to 32 square feet, so that avoids the real estate issue.
So is that how it reads currently, Scott?
No, it
Revised?
doesn't. No, it does
No,
not.
it does not.
No, it's 6 square feet so any sign that would, with that motion, any sign up to 32 square feet would then be exempted. So it doesn't matter if it's real estate or temporary event or anything, any of those would be exempted based on that motion.
See, and to me, that just takes away exactly what we're talking about, the 4x8 sheet of plywood that gets cut in half and thrown up at a corner somewhere, and then we can't do anything about it. So that, to me, is a giant step backwards. We're trying to go forward with this.
It's not a step backwards because currently, commercial, industrial gets up to that stage. We're looking to lessen people, so it's not a step backwards. It is in this ordinance, but it's not a step backwards to what we're doing today. So why don't we check it out for a year before we penalize the people that are doing commerce in our business? And we could see how it works.
If they're selling a 100,000 square foot building, whatever the permit fee and the time frame it takes to do that is nothing compared to the time and the effort and the money they put into selling that building. I'm really against us giving away without doing it, without charging anything for it.
But they're doing that now, so we're not giving anything away.
Right, but what you're talking about before is that we're not going after the signs that are the problem. We're only penalizing somebody that's actually doing what we're asking them to do.
Correct.
Well, if we exempt every sign that's 4x8, you're going to end up exempting everybody that's the problem. So why are we even doing this?
So why don't, to add to the amendment, why don't we add marketed properties? Currently marketed properties.
Now you're getting into the content. You can't regulate
That's
the
not
content.
content. That's
Yes,
the
it
action
is.
of the property.
No,
So,
it's-
I would
it's-
defer to council on that.
Yeah.
It's not saying realtors, it's not saying what the sign says. It's the.
How are you going to know what the
property.
sign says if you're not looking at what the sign says for the content? You're looking at the sign for the content.
You're
I'm positive of that.
100% sure that
I am
that's
positive
not
of that,
an
yes.
issue?
I'm very knowledgeable about the court case. I'm positive of that. That would be considered a content-based
Take that off.
restriction.
Then I still agree we don't penalize the commercial activities for the sake of that 1% that may be a problem or may not, that we can analyze over the next year.
I mean, I wish there was a way we could do this where we could separate it out. I mean, we have not, shame on us for not being more, diligent about following up on real estate signs, because those did require permit under the current ordinance. They've gotten a pass for the last 7 years, so they're fortunate for that. But I wish there was a way we could do things a little bit differently with that, but, we've looked at this to try and figure out a easily enforceable way of doing it, and frankly, there's just a hard way to do it. The only thing that I can say that, might make it easier is some of the renewals. I think some of them had concerns about the renewals. We can certainly look at the fees for the renewal, especially if there's no change to the sign or location or content. Instead of having a $55 fee, perhaps we have a discounted fee, and we have to come back with a different ordinance for that. But, that's something we can certainly look at also.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I still, we're penalizing a group, okay, not penalizing because they've given a break for 7 years, but we don't really know what the problem is. So they have to pay for, just in case somebody down there puts a sign out that we may or may not enforce. It's just so willy-nilly on one side that a whole industry has to pay for the concept that just in case somebody wants to put a sign out there. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'd rather not penalize them and see how it goes for a year and then decide, you know what, it's not working, or it is working, or these people are out of control, so we have to put something in force. Sorry, realtors.
Sure.
But until then, why are we penalizing a whole industry and the marketability and the business friendliness of a town for the hopes that we need to control something that may or may not happen? That's my concern.
Some questions, Scott. Okay, so you're in the industrial park and you need a forklift operator, and you paint a sign and you stick it in your property on a piece of 4x8 plywood. Do you need a permit?
Yes.
Okay. If I want to put a sign out on Mooseheart on the fence out there, and it's on a 4x8 sheet of plywood, do I need a permit? Just a random, I'm the Mother's Club.
Yes.
Okay. So if I'm a realtor and I want to put a 4x8 sign in front of a business, do I need a permit?
Yes.
Okay. So 4x8, that's 32 square feet. Okay. So what the change would do is make it so that anything under that, or any 36 square feet and under, you don't need to have a permit, right?
The 32, I think it was 32.
32
Yeah.
and under.
That's what the motion was.
Okay. So as of today's code, you do need a permit.
Yes.
So then why would we change it and take that off? That's where I'm very confused, Nick, is we currently require a permit for those signs today. So why would we take that restriction off? I don't understand why we would want to move backwards.
So it's just a matter of enforcement.
Right.
Correct. We require permits for all those. Real estate signs do require a permit, but we have not been diligent about following up on that. And most other communities do require them for the larger signs too, so.
Your amendment would take the teeth away, and we wouldn't be able to enforce anything.
Right, so that's why, I mean, either are we the bad guys for not enforcing it,
Yeah,
so we can keep it the same and
right,
keep moving
right.
the same way we're doing. I have no problem with that.
But I also think that if I'm the Mother's Club and I have to get a permit, if I'm a factory and I'm hiring a forklift operator, and those signs are exactly the same sign as a marketing sign for a piece of real estate property, it's only equitable that every single person has to get a sign. Because we have been enforcing it for the other groups for all this time. So we were just giving the real estate people a break on that. So, okay, let's just play catch up and say, okay, across the board, 32 square feet is our cutoff for signs. And, if you want to make your sign 30 square feet, then you don't need a permit. I mean, it's just like, it's a very, like we're just trying to bring everyone into compliance so that we have some control over signage. And I don't think that that's an unrealistic way of doing things.
But I would say that the way I heard it last 2 weeks ago was that the distinction that we were trying to make was the industrial section was different than the commercial section, which was different than the residential section.
That's one option, yeah.
Is that no longer the case?
No, there's different sections that apply to both, but they're the same right now, the way the code is written.
What is the sign permit requirement size for industrial? Because the conversation that we were having was to bring, at the last meeting, was to bring it in line with the commercial. That was the motion, that was what the discussion was.
As a quick note to, when Susan, your point about the factory that had the sign out for the for
Forklift,
employment,
right.
right, that actually would be allowed. It's industrial,
Right,
it's 4x8.
right.
That would be allowed without a permit.
32 square feet is allowed, right?
So
Without a permit.
residential, you cannot exceed 32 square feet in area.
Right,
I'm
so
looking at that.
Oh, it's even lower than
It's
that.
6 square, yeah,
No.
6 square feet for residential.
Okay, and so in commercial areas, for the limited duration sign, which is the longer version sign, they should have a maximum square footage of 32 square feet. And any limited duration sign exceeding 6 square feet requires a permit. So if you say that if you change the threshold to 32 square feet, then you wouldn't have any permit required for limited duration to longer duration signs at all.
what is it for the industrial areas?
Industrial, for limited duration, it's also 32 square feet. Maximum size is 32 square feet.
What is a community sign?
What is a community sign?
Yeah, not how many square feet, but what is it exactly?
Community sign is more like a sign that advertises like a community event type of thing.
So I'm still unclear. The maximum amount that is not needed for a industrial area is 32 square feet.
That's the largest sign you can put up as a 32 square feet sign, 32 square foot sign in industrial and commercial without going through a variance process or something like that.
Correct. And
But that requires a permit.
Correct.
What's the largest size in an industrial complex that does not require
6 square feet.
6 square feet? So basically, it's 6 square feet across the board, no
Correct.
matter where it's at, that doesn't require.
Those
a
don't
permit.
require permits, correct.
Okay. But everything above that requires a permit, whether
Correct.
it's in residential, commercial, or industrial.
Exactly, yes.
See, if we're gonna try and track these, if we don't permit them,
It's 6 square feet
not
to
doing
32
anything.
square feet.
I'm sorry?
It's 6 square feet to 32 square feet.
Is what requires a
Is what we're
permit.
requirement.
Correct, right.
Okay.
And 6 square foot is like a standard, residential real estate sign, or, sometimes they're in vacant lots and whatnot. So that was the idea, is to exempt those, because they're smaller.
Are the permit fees of $55 standard among the surrounding communities?
We're actually right in the middle. Some towns charge more. I think Aurora charged like $80. Some towns charge less, I think, but we're right in that range.
Does that apply to marketed properties? They have to pay $80 to put a sign up?
As far as I
Industrial,
didn't
commercial?
directly ask them that, but based on the temporary sign ordinance, the way they have it written, that's my impression, yes.
My point, I'll just bring up one other point. It just, why I'm involved in this, I'm not a realtor, I don't really care, but we had 2 problems brought to us. The constitutionality, which just resolves, and there were problem signs at like Storehenge and up Randall Road that people do. It doesn't resolve that. We moved off tangent and we're talking in circles about stuff that we can talk for weeks on this of what we're doing, but we're just adding processes and government to an area that isn't necessarily a problem. This still doesn't solve the problems that the mayor brought up about those signs that pop up. I would rather spend this time figuring out how we're going to resolve those and leave this alone and move forward with that. I mean, that's why, well, I have a motion on the table still, so.
It actually does address those, though. Those are the temporary signs. There's two different types. There's the temporary signs, and there's the limited duration signs. So the limited duration signs are the ones that I was talking about, are the more long-term type signs. We also talk about temporary signs as well, and those have size limitations and time limitations and how many signs they can put in a particular location. So we do address that also in the ordinance. So that would take care of it.
But that's the problem, Mary. I would rather sit back and view and see if we're solving those issues before we just go out and penalize our commercial marketers. So that's.
I wish we could, because, I mean, that's a content, that's a content issue, and unfortunately, the Supreme Court has hamstrung us, and it's going to hamstring every other town with these same types of things. We're just at the forefront of it, unfortunately, that, we're trying to be proactive because our ordinance is modeled similar to the one that was subject to the Supreme Court case.
Well, I would move that you not be so efficient. No, it's still, I think if we move the sign up, it kind of gives us some teeth, and we can review and see what our problems are without penalizing the whole industry and the marketability of our town before we make something that's in cement.
I think that's why I will support this. It's because this is a decision that impacts commerce for what we're doing. We can always change it if it becomes an issue at a later date. We can make the change to it, because what you're saying doesn't affect actually the constitutionality of it, but it does impact commerce. And I think it also, on some level, we're looking at larger signs for probably what the content of what we know the current problem to be existing is for marketing of these properties. For me, it then becomes a health and safety issue, because as you're driving by these larger properties, if you're stopping to try to look and get a website off or a phone number off of a larger piece of property, you're possibly going to miss it, because if those are allowed, those are what they're going to put, because the realtors are not going to violate the law. They're going to go to the smaller size. So then we're kind of weighing health and safety issues versus $55. And I think just in the weighing of it, knowing that the current issue is not a problem, I would more err on the side of commerce and health and safety at this point.
I just want to point out that if we don't have any type of permit system or registration system, that there will be no enforcement of this section. It's impossible.
I wanted to emphasize that again. If we go with your motion is, we will not have any mechanism to really regulate it.
No.
Lucy, you had a
It will be
comment?
unregulated signs.
From
You'll
someone,
have no way to track it.
But this gives us a mechanism to just monitor those who ask for permits.
Well, for someone that's been in the real estate industry and put up these sorts of signs and gotten permits, I think that if the surrounding communities are doing that, that's okay. I think we have to pay a lot of attention to the renewal, though, because industrial properties can stay on the market a very long time. And if you're a broker having to pay $55 over and over again, $55 is a lot, but it could really add up.
Sure.
So, and then you lose the listing because you haven't sold it, and it goes to and it's a sunk cost and all that sort of thing.
Right, and I think we get that, and that's why we were suggesting a reduced fee for the renewal, because of the fact that, if they don't make any changes, and it's going to, the property's listed for 3 years. I mean, cities had properties that have been listed for 3 years here. If that's the case, then I think it would be fair to have a reduced fee for a renewal, as long as you're not making any substantive changes to that.
Or
side.
no fee, or whatever, as long as the paperwork is taken care of and everything, but something.
Right, something to that effect, yes. I think that's a fair thing to do.
Scott, approximately how many signs would this have affected in the last year? Do you know?
I couldn't really tell you. I mean, properties go on the market and off the market all the time, but, it's probably several dozen, I would guess. I don't know.
So, I mean, that can be looked at two different ways. Okay, so we're talking about 24 signs, which means there's only 24 transactions that realtors have to make, which doesn't seem like it's overly burdensome to be able to make it so that they are doing the same thing that any other group would have to do based on the sign size. To me, that does not seem like we're being overly taxing to the business community to ask them to please come into compliance with what everybody else has had to do that we just haven't been keeping track of.
Well, it's not just in our town. I mean, they're all over the place. For them, it's a lot more than 24.
Well, I understand that, but if they have to do it in St. Charles and they have to do it in Aurora and they have to do it everywhere else, we're not asking them to do anything more than any other town is asking them to do. So again, it's just bringing everybody, it's giving parity to everyone who has to put up a sign. And to me, that just seems fair. I'm all about fair. And so it's been an ordinance, we just have not been enforcing it. So why do we go backwards? And that's where I'm having a hard time saying, well, why would we amend this in any other way? We're bending to somewhat of what the real estate community has asked us to do. We're now going to be paying closer attention. We're bringing this into alignment with the Supreme Court decision. And, I don't see a downside to this. Staff has brought back an ordinance that has basically changed things to what we asked them to do. Marty?
I just wanted to, as far as transparency and, as adding an extra fee to it, we're not hiring additional staff. We're not currently, there is no plan for these fees to fund any additional staff. And the collection of these fees are already included in the person's salary who's financed with property taxes from that same property. So in a way, you're now double taxing for one person's salary to do the same thing, which is to approve the process of the applications. If the application process is adding more time, where we have more overtime and more staffing needed to process all the extra work that is because of that, then we should be funding with additional revenue. But if the job is going to be done in the same 8-hour period that it's going to be, you've already collected revenue for filling that position.
Well, with that logic, then we would not have any permitting fees for buildings or anything else. Because Jeff does his job in his hours every day, so you would never collect a permit fee for anything, would you?
But I'm also trying to justify the scale of what we're doing versus with going back to we're adding more work to staff that's already working. So what is the compelling need to add more fees and more work on staff?
Laura?
And that's since we haven't been tracking it and haven't known it to be a problem, what we're suggesting is that we do this as a compromise, that if it becomes a problem, we can change it. You can always put the brakes on those things later.
Well, here's the conundrum. We are already charging permit fees to the non-real estate signs that are being put up.
To some people.
To some people. What the Supreme Court case makes clear is that we can't make distinctions between those people. So what you're really doing is just removing that revenue and the purpose of that fee was to cover the cost of the time that it takes that department to perform that service for a particular individual need. I don't think it makes sense to spread that cost across all taxpayers when the sign is for a private benefit.
No, I think the only difference is that we're talking signs for 6 square feet, which don't require, and 32 square feet.
No, we're not. We're talking about revenue had previously been collected on the permit fees for signs of this size.
Correct.
For signs of
between 6 and 32
square feet. What is that amount?
$880.
$880, right.
16 signs.
So it's pretty minimal.
16.
Considering. I think that an effort was made to charge the permit fee that was really a proper reflection of the time spent reviewing those permit applications.
On those signs that are above 6 square feet, how many are beyond the 32
None.
of that 880?
We don't
I don't
allow.
believe there are any.
Don't know, you'd have to apply for a variance
Variance.
if you wanted to have a sign of that size, and I'm not aware of how many
I don't know that we've had any
entities
in
applied
recent
for a
times for
variance.
that.
Usually the 32 square foot is sufficient.
Right.
Susan?
Okay.
Can I just ask, oh,
Yes.
sorry.
Wait,
I
Dave
guess
first.
my comment is just this. I mean, I've been sitting here listening because I've read through this as I read through the prior one 2 weeks ago, and I read through it again, and I've thought about it, and I just don't know what to do with it. One thing I think that we need to keep in mind, we talk numbers here, and we talk, 6 square feet. Do we really realize what 6 square feet is? A poster board that we've all bought at the dime store, well, we don't have dime stores anymore, but a poster board that we've all bought for our kids to do an art project on is 4.27 square feet, and that's for a 22-inch by 28-inch poster board. You can get bigger ones. So 6 square feet, 32 square feet, we all know what a sheet of plywood looks like, but just to kind of put it in perspective. I feel like we have to support our staff on this one. They're the ones that are down here that answer the phones every day. They live this and they breathe this. They take the complaints, they take the questions, they take the compliments, hopefully. And certainly Scott isn't looking for more work to do if he doesn't think it's justifiable. He feels as though, and I know you've been working on this sign ordinance for over 2 years. And I just feel like he's the expert here in this, and we should listen to him on this one. And because I can't find a real compelling reason to change what they're proposing, I feel like we need to support our staff on it. So I will be supporting them. I won't be supporting an amendment to the motion without Scott saying I think that's a good way to go.
Can I ask a question of Alex? Maybe you know, or maybe Scott knows. I don't even know. We made some statements that every other town does this. So it kind of laid it out that realtors are, wherever they market a property, they know to go to the town and apply for put a permit in and pay the fee. Is that the case? Are we the only ones that don't charge for this type of sign?
Generally speaking, Scott was correct. So generally speaking, lots of communities have building permits for non-residential. Most places for residential, 90% of the municipalities, and please keep in mind that most statistics are made up on the spot, but the vast majority of
80%.
of communities give a real estate exemption, which unfortunately for all of us just is unconstitutional. Now, you can't do a real estate carve out, as Scott has been saying for in all of these meetings. The only thing that I would, while I'm up here, the only other thing that I would ask up here is is the prior approval for, as Alderman Atack pointed out, is the prior approval, so the commercial signs are already made up. The commercial signs are also stored by commercial realtors. It is not this concept of the idea that they print new signs or get new signs created every single time that a property gets actively marketed is not correct. And so it's really, I don't mind having some sort of registration. That's not a problem, but a permitting process of filling something out at home or at your office, driving down to City Hall, and then waiting for staff to approve that sign, the days that will take and the labor that will take, that's the biggest, for me, that is the biggest concern. Because that's where you're going to slow down commerce. If you can track it in a way and you can write language into it, I would love to work with staff to write language into that. Whereas if they get the registration and the sign goes up and staff then at some point looks at it and they go, oh man, well, they can't do this. This is unacceptable. And then go make the realtor or the business owner, or again, I'm here representing the realtors, but this affects business directly as well. Can you take this sign down and do it this way? That's not correct. But the ability for a realtor to put that sign up immediately is key, often because you have unfortunately, you have unreasonable business owners that are like, hey, somebody moved out, I need to have a sign up, and I want this listed, sign up, ready to go, and then in a day or over the weekend. And that puts the realtor in a tough spot of how long it takes for the permitting process. I don't think I'm being unreasonable here to say, if you're telling me that you have to track this, okay, fine, you have to track it. I can concede that point, but the prior approval is just really going to slow everything down to a point where it will hurt commerce.
Sorry.
I'm done. I yield.
No, actually, I have a question for you. Are you currently a realtor?
No.
Okay. I just wondered if you could speak to what the process is in, let's say, Aurora or St. Charles, like what type of process they have for signs.
For real estate signs, I can't speak to.
Okay.
I can't speak to any other signs.
Okay, for a real estate sign in Aurora, I'm a realtor in Aurora, I want to put up a sign, what do I do?
Yep, Mayor said it, just put it up.
Okay.
There is no, even for the commercial signs, and I just had lunch with a big commercial broker in Aurora, and I talked to her a little bit about this, and she just was like, oh, Aurora's great, we don't. And again, I want to give you both, even though this hurts my argument, I want to give you both sides to this, because it's my reputation on the line. That may change eventually once Aurora decides to redo their sign ordinance. Scott and staff is doing an amazing job being one of your second. Elgin is the only one that I'm aware of who has already done their sign ordinance. Batavia is number 2 in this area, which is a great thing. You're never going to hear me say that you shouldn't fix public policy to be legal. So it could change in Aurora, but Aurora, St. Charles, it doesn't exist right now, and I don't see that on the horizon for him. Not that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but no, right now you put a sign up. You just absolutely put a sign up.
Okay, so
But you follow the rules, the code for how to put the sign up. I mean, there's setbacks, there's size restrictions, and you look those up in Aurora, and then you put your sign up.
Correct, but there's no, yes, you are 100% correct, but there's just no permitting process.
So you spoke to Elgin as the first one. Do they have a permitting process now?
I don't want to be on the record for calling Elgin out, but it was when I read through Elgin's sign ordinance, while their attorneys believe that it is constitutional, I did not believe that it was that is why I didn't come here with that. That's why I never talked to staff about it. The way that Elgin fixed their sign ordinance is that we still have an real estate. They gave us a content exemption, and I know legally there have been some appellate cases that have come after Gilbert's versus Arizona, or Reed versus Gilbert's, that have protected anything affecting commerce. You can give, they have disagreed with the Supreme Court decision to allow municipalities to make content decisions in regards to commerce. I guess that is what Elgin decided, and they left the real estate exemption. I didn't even lobby for it. I just went there, lawyer was like, here you go, done.
Okay, thank you. Wait, Alan had something he wanted to say first, Scott.
I think we're forgetting that this is not just an ordinance about realty or about realtors. This is about our sign ordinance in total for this city, and we can't forget that. I just think if we expand it up to 32 square feet, you might as well not even have the ordinance, because there's no way we're going to track it. There's no way you're going to give anybody in our development department or building department anything to go out and say, you can't have that sign. That's the only way we're going to do it.
Then why don't we go with the exemption for marketed properties until we get clarification, at least until we get
How about we
clarification?
wait for a court case to decide that for us, because what we're doing now is because of a court case. I can't support it the way you want your amendment, because you're taking away anything that our staff could use to either track it or do anything about it.
I get that, but it's like gun control, and I don't own a gun, but you're penalizing the people that do it legally, and everyone else is going to put a sign out anyways. I mean, it just doesn't solve our problems.
But if
That's
you
what,
put the
I would
exemption-
want an ordinance that actually solves our problems, not to make me feel good like I'm doing something. That's what I want.
Savati?
Would it be reasonable to say that the biggest issue is expediency?
Yes.
Would it be reasonable to say that, and maybe this is a Scott question, that within this amendment, within the ordinance, we're talking about a simpler permitting process?
Correct.
Yes,
With-
we've already said that, 60 days from now.
We're going to,
Would that process be able to be conditional to the point that if they submit something online, they're able to place something, you're able to then, it's going to have location, it's going to have size, it's going to have all that. Would they then be able to go and you be able to get that sign up? They'd be able to go and check it? And
once,
then,
yeah, I mean, what I would anticipate what we would see is something that would be a little bit easier system where perhaps they can submit it online or by email to us, so they don't have to come in physically, and then we would, they would have a plan showing, what it's going to look like and where they're going to put it. And then we can easily, review that and give them some type of a simpler approval of some sort, so.
Dan Chanson?
So you're asking for the submittal being conditional improvement?
Yes.
And then staff says?
yes.
Is that reasonable?
I guess I'm not clear on what you're,
That's what it says.
Once you've submitted your permit,
right,
you don't have to get approval on the permit. Go put your sign up, like you submit on Friday night.
right.
You submit the permit, then on Monday, when staff comes in, they get the email, they check it, they go with the sign. Sign's already been up all weekend.
Well, that's going to be hard because then we're going to be in a situation where we have to do enforcement if it's not correct or the right location and things too, so.
But you yourself had said that also that they, and again, we're using real estate as an
Yeah.
example, and this is kind of but they self-regulate pretty well. They understand setbacks, they understand where all that is, correct? So it would be reasonable to say that for this industry, which is the one that really has to get to market the quickest, that if, they play by the rules, these are the ones, you gotta know where they are, because they've got to submit it. The ones we don't know where they are, that's the problem. So, correct?
Well, we can't, again, I hate to keep harping on this, but we can't make a content distinction. I mean, I understand the realtors.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that. But again, you're using this as, just using it as an example.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, if XYZ company submits an application on Friday night, I want to put up a sign, I'm going to put it here, I understand where the setbacks are going to be, because all that's going to be spit back to them as to this is where it's got to be. I mean, that's doable. I mean, I work in the industry, that is possible. You can submit it, it spits back, it says, this is where it has to be, and you go. And so on Monday morning, or if it's Tuesday night, you come in on Wednesday, it's, you can see, okay, there's something there. Rhonda, you can go out and take a look at it. It's, it's good? Yes, it's not? Got to pull it.
Yeah, I mean, could they do that? Yeah, I mean, they could do it at their own risk, that, they're putting in the right location and everything, but if it's not, then we're going to be in an enforcement situation. We're going to have to go say, hey, now you got to move this spot sign, take it out, reduce the size, whatever the case may be, because we're getting an assumption
have to do that anyway.
what they're submitting is correct.
Even with a permit, people don't do it right.
Right, but we don't allow, we don't give them proactive authority to go ahead and build the building or build the sign or anything like that in advance.
But they do
So you
have
go out and
signs
meet
pre-made. And so if the signs are made and they use them for the next project, project, they're going to be the right size, right? I mean, it's in their own best interest to comply.
Right.
And so if they don't comply, it is an enforcement issue, but then they pay for that. However, whatever the enforcement costs are, perhaps, they pay for that. And then we then force them to act in their own best interest by compliance.
It's true, but it's
It's
difficult to, if, in the event that there was the registration and the conditional approval was given and the sign was put up, I would just be interested in knowing, it seems like it's more difficult to go through the administrative process of having that sign removed once it has been put up. Than,
'Cause it's on private property.
and being able to approve it before it's put up.
It's on private property. We can't physically remove it. We have to actually go through adjudication or a court situation. If the property owner is going to say, you know what, no, my sign's already up, and then, they're trying to get a permit. Now we have to go into a legal process to have that sign actually removed.
As if somebody put it up whether they had a permit or not.
Correct. Exactly.
So this doesn't solve.
Just send Rhonda
people that aren't going to do this.
We're all good. So back to this, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Do you want to call it? Or do you want to re-amend it?
I'll call the
Okay, you're going to
question.
call it, okay. So,
Can you restate the motion?
I don't want to.
You wanna?
So I lose, somebody else could propose another
well.
proposal.
No, you already got a motion and a second on the floor, so what's the motion?
question.
No, I mean, can you say what it is?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought.
Yeah,
Jen, can you read it back for us, please?
I move to send to City Council approval of ordinance 1746 with the amendment that we would change the size restriction to 32 square feet for both commercial and industrial.
Okay, thank you. Was that exactly right? Okay, super. Okay, and we have a motion and a second on the floor. Can you please do a roll call?
Surratt.
Aye.
McFadden, absent. Rosado.
Aye.
Atek.
No.
Stark.
No?
Chanzit.
No.
Wolf.
No.
Salvati.
Aye.
Brown.
No.
O'Brien.
No.
And Callahan.
Aye.
Motion is 4 6 nays.
Okay, so motion was defeated. So, Callahan,
I will propose that we recommend to City Council approval of ordinance 17-46, amending the zoning code regarding temporary signs with an exemption for 60 days to get a registration process in place,
it's in here.
That's
in
what's
here.
part of the,
which is what we have to vote on because that was an option brought before us tonight. So I'm
Okay.
talking about Scott's issue where we remain content neutral on all of these things, giving staff the ability to identify the issue and, wait, I'm rethinking.
Are you saying
Okay.
the motion is proposed?
Okay, so let me just, the ordinance is,
'Cause
it's revised, delays implementation of the ordinance for 60 days. That 60-day delay gives staff time to implement a simpler permitting process for temporary signs that may involve just providing electronic copies of permit forms and attachments. That's how this has been revised, based on the feedback they got from us last week.
So to the additional part of it, to include no prior permitting approval, which speaks to Scott's language about it.
And I would support that.
Thank you.
Wait,
I don't understand.
I don't understand that at all.
We are submitting the registration process without having to go through the approval process for them to put the signs in. The staff is going to be able to get the knowledge that it's there.
It is.
And if it's wrong, it will have to be taken down. It accomplishes the goals of identifying those issues for which will identify the ability for the realtors to place their signs. Staff can track it, and if need be, they can have it removed. And we have processes for those to be removed just the same as we would for a non-permitted, non-registered sign. They would all follow the same if it was wrong.
see, to me, this just stays where we're at. It doesn't make anything any better.
It doesn't. It allows the realtor to get to market fast. In this industry,
Doesn't make things worse either.
right. I mean, it does the same thing. And again, someone said it's in their best interest to do it right.
Yes.
I understand that, but you're also going to then put all that onus onto staff to make sure that everything is right after they've already
That's what
submitted.
they want.
But they have to do
That's
it
what
anyway.
they're asking for.
May I ask Scott a question?
Sure, go
we-
ahead, Mike.
If we put it, according to Marty's amended motion, how will we get it off the property? If it's.
That's the problem.
Please
If
put-
the property owner's going to be
We don't
obstinate
have that
about it, say, you know what,
process.
forget
So are
you.
you asking for 60
Yeah.
days for them to come up with that process?
No. The removal process is separate from the permitting process, no matter what. If they put up a sign, we know it's there, we go check and it's wrong, they're saying to remove it, is just the same. It's the same process as if the sign was put up and it was done incorrectly, which the person didn't go through the process. Because you can't, and this is where you talk out of both sides, or not
I
you,
understand
but
that.
talking out of both sides with saying we want to know where these are, we know where they are, and we can do something about it, versus everybody, we don't know where they are, they're all hidden, everybody can do it. It cleans it up. It is the compromise that everybody has proposed.
I think that, to your point, Marty, if someone gets a permit, it takes 2 or 3 days for the permit to get approved, and then we say, okay, this is good, we approve the permit, unless Jeff or Rhonda is standing there during the installation of the sign, it could go awry no matter. And so
Absolutely.
then we would have to say, oh, even though we approved it this way, you messed up, now you've got to take it down.
Right.
So there is that chance that it could happen, no matter if it's approved 3 days later or temporarily approved as soon as it hits the inbox
And
of whoever's
all of
doing
these
it.
things can happen anyways, because we have told everybody in this community, we do not proactively enforce it. So
We've
we
got
either,
a motion, but we have no second.
right,
Second.
no, Dan seconded.
Oh, I thought he said there wasn't.
Oh, I thought you seconded.
No, okay.
I said I would support.
Okay.
That's a second.
All right.
Okay, so motion by Callahan, second by,
But I kind of like the concept, except I still don't have a clear understanding of the motion.
You have provisional approval once you submit.
yes. As soon as the permit is submitted, you have conditional approval to put your sign up.
Yes.
Well, Scott, how do you feel about that?
I don't like it. I mean, I think it's going to be, I mean, honestly, it's going to be, I mean, it's the ask for forgiveness and permission situation. You know, I mean, let's keep in mind that it's, you know, the realtors, they're the ones that aren't going to be the problem. They're the ones that, you know, probably understand, say, okay, I can have a 32 square foot sign and I can do that. But, you know, this is not just about realtors. There's lots of different people that put up signs. They have no idea necessarily what our regulations are. You get a community group that puts it up, you know, they're going to just say, hey, I want to put up a sign, and they submit a permit. Oh, I want to put up a 64 square foot banner. Well, no, you can't. Well, if we just do this process, the 64-foot banner is going to be up there, and we're going to have to go back to them and spend more staff time going and fixing the problem as opposed to we are, you know, getting it taken care of up front. It's no different than building a house. You know, we get these plans, we review them in advance to make sure that they meet the code requirements. That's part of the whole process. If we now are going to say that, you know, you can go ahead and build a house and we're going to go wait on the first inspection and see if you're doing it right, well, you know, that's a problem.
Those are apples and oranges.
No,
Right.
no,
We're-
it's
We
not.
might as well tell the realtors, just put the sign up, because there's no chance of going back and enforcing this anyways. I mean, that's what we're saying. It's
That's
such a
what
pain
you're
in the
trying
butt.
to say by doing this.
No, we're trying to appease the one group that's trying to do the right thing. And
it's not just about that. It's about every sign that gets erected in this town, and that's what you guys are forgetting. How many times do I have to say that? It's
you
not
could
just
say
about one
all
group.
you want, but the problem aren't the people that are coming getting permits. So say it more. It doesn't matter.
Can we do a roll call?
We can, because I have a motion by Callahan, a second by Chanzit to, would you please read the motion, Jenny?
Clarification.
Thank you.
To recommend approval of ordinance 1746, amending zoning code regarding temporary signs, and to include no prior permitting approval. Am I missing?
Those were the words you said, Marty, so. And then you
There's
said, "Let
also
me think
language about
it."
60-day exception, but I don't know if that's still.
So I can bring.
Well, we can, the only problem with, well, we still have 2 weeks to get something implemented for a process. for staff to be able to figure out.
You got to make a motion.
No, no.
Can you amend it saying conditional upon meeting standards? So, permit, you can register online with, for the sign, provided, with conditional implementation, provided it meets permitting standards.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we amend it to allow Scott and the realtors to work together to come up with something in 60 days that's agreeable?
Well,
That sounds delicious.
I think we should pass it the way it's written, because that's what the staff thinks that they can do
Agreed.
with our public that
Scott
has
has
to do
worked on it
this.
for 2 years.
There's a motion on the floor. We
Okay,
either,
so
let's do a roll call on the
roll call on
motion, as it's understood.
Did I have the motion correct?
I will rephrase the motion, so I will withdraw that one. I recommend to City Council approval of ordinance 17-46, amending the zoning code requiring the temporary signs with a waiver of the pre-approval permitting process prior to installation.
Okay.
That would mean no permitting process.
That's
No.
what that means.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it means.
That's
The
what he
literal
said.
meaning of
Waiver
that.
of the permitting process.
Prior to installation.
I said prior pre-approval.
Yes, you said waiver of the pre-approval permitting process.
Prior to installation. What I want is to make sure that and if anybody can phrase it better, please. I want to be able to have
erection of sign.
the ability to have commerce not interrupted. I want to be able to have them submit the application to us online, but not withhold their ability to install the signs. We still get to look at the signs. We are encouraging behavior that people will support our sign ordinance. We are trying to make sure that we have people follow our ordinances.
Let me try to rephrase it for you then.
Yes.
Okay, so amend to pass the ordinance as written with one amendment, that amendment to be to allow the signs to be erected at risk during the process of the permit application.
Yeah, because then if it complies with all the rest, I would agree. Because that's where it's complying with the rest. Yes.
Complying with all the rest is what community development is reviewing and approving the permit.
Right, because
So
the
I-
sign can be installed. We know where it's at. We go out and check it, and it's wrong, it doesn't comply, it's their risk. We're stating it up front. And if they have to remove it, they have to remove it.
It's
And we
not very
have-
risky if they can have it up during the entire time of the adjudication process, but
Right.
Yeah,
Unless we have language in there saying that we're allowed to take that out.
we can't do that.
Is that your
Well,
motion?
that would be fair.
Yeah.
If we have the authority as the city to remove the sign,
So-
if it's not in compliance.
Right.
That would help.
Subject to a city approval after installation and with enforcement to compliance.
That would
You
help.
can't go on somebody's private property and remove it.
I know, but
Right,
That would help, though.
it would help.
So Marty's
gives you some
made the
teeth.
motion.
Yes.
Do we have a second for that
It
motion?
gives you some teeth.
it's the amended motion.
Do we have a second for that motion? Motion dies.
Second.
Okay, so we got a second to the motion to recommend the city council the approval of ordinance 17-46 amended to allow signs to be erected at risk of the,
Install.
During permit review.
Property owner?
yes.
During permit review.
Okay, let's,
Discussion, I'll be brief. I fully understand what you said, Marty. I get that, and I agree with it, except for realtors especially, absolutely. But we can't single out realtors, so I have to defer to Scott and to staff that we don't want to be putting up signs on private property where if they do it incorrectly or they don't comply with the regulations, we can't do anything. We're going to be powerless. Now, we can say we're going to take them off and we're going to sue them and we're going to do things, litigate them if we had to, but that just costs us money for some piece of crap sign.
And if I could just speak to my motion on that, it does exactly what you're saying while remaining, the key part of it is we're remaining content neutral.
Right.
I'm trying to make sure that we are gaining compliance with our ordinances by anyone who supplies. If it's somebody else that puts up a sign that is whatever outside of the realtor sign, any sign can be installed, and we go through the permitting process, and it can be removed if it does not comply with the rest of the provisions. It's the same, we're investing the same amount of time and energy as if somebody just puts that same sign out there
Right.
with no permitting process.
understand that.
We're gaining compliance and the ability to track, which was staff's main goal, which we have heard over and over. And now we are also saying, we need you to do it right. Everybody that's going to do it right is going to do it right no matter what. On those rare occasions, which are rarer, we would be able to remove them.
How do we remove them?
Through the same process as an unpermitted.
So that's a long process.
We don't know.
That's what staff's saying.
Yeah, it's very long.
Yeah, we're
It-
talking
it's an
about now
adjudication process.
adjudication, and we're talking about getting people to comply with adjudication and getting them to come down here to adjudication and
So the same person
doing it
that
again.
would, so the same person that would file the permit and install it wouldn't have to do that. They wouldn't even have to permit. They can just install it wrong no matter what. And we'd still have to go through the adjudication. We're trying to gain compliance with the majority of well-minded people out there. The ones that are going to do it wrong are going to do it wrong no matter what.
And that's why I support the amendment, because these are people raising their hands and saying, look.
Help us.
Look my sign.
Yes.
Okay, let's
Do roll call?
do a roll call.
Callahan?
Aye.
Meixler, absent. Mueller, absent. Ewer, absent. Saral?
Aye.
Pizarro?
Aye.
Azak?
Aye.
Stark?
No?
Jansen?
Aye.
Wolf?
No.
Salvati?
Aye.
Brown?
No.
And O'Brien?
I'm going to say aye.
7 ayes, 3 nays. Motion carried.
Okay, so we're going to send this to city council where we'll go through this again because there's 4 people missing.
Can't wait.
And so we can talk about this one more time
And change our votes.
and change our votes if we want to. Interestingly enough about this is we sent this back to staff. We asked them to make these adjustments. They came back with the adjustments. The primary reason for doing this was to make it so that we had no problem with any Supreme Court ruling in terms of the signs. And so now we're making it even more complex rather than doing that. I mean, if we would have just gone with what staff recommended, it would have been just so much
Let's
easier.
save the rest of
So-
that conversation
But-
for Monday night.
I know, I understand
We got
that.
another item on the agenda.
But the problem is, Dave, is that there's so many people missing here, I almost wish that we would have delayed this, but okay, thank you.
All right, so what I'd like to do, if nobody has a problem, is I'd like to jump ahead a little bit on the agenda.
Yes.
And I would
no.
like to get item number 7 and number 8 done with before we go into the next very long discussion. So, does anybody have a problem with that?
Nope.
Okay, item number 7 is 1786-R, policy for approving the contract change orders for the wastewater treatment facility Phase 1 rehabilitation project. Memo from Gary Holm, Public Utilities, Alderman O'Brien.
Yeah, it's a change order. We had the monthly statement from Scott Trotter saying, where things were changed, and we have some contract modification, the CMRs, I forget what the R is, excuse me, modification requests. So there's been a list of them. It was on that monthly statement. It's on the back of this change order request, and they bundled them together to give change order number 1. So what you'll find in there also will be some credits and some additional charges. Anybody have any questions?
Well, that's actually item number 8,
Oh,
which is 17-87R, so if we could hit, we can go, you've explained that one, so Gary, you got any more comments on that? And we can vote on that one?
Well, the only complicating factor on 1787-R is that the value of it has changed slightly since your memo came out, so I'll have to change the memo. It's actually $68,352, so it's a matter of like $100, but that is the accurate value. So 1787 is going to have to go on the regular agenda so that I can modify the memo and the resolution to reflect the correct cost for that change order.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns with this? If not, can I ask a couple of questions then?
Of course.
I see that it was by Comcast and telephone. It was some routing of their piping. Do they contribute anything towards that cost?
No, this was cost required in order to get them off the poles into conduits for.
Get them underground?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I also noticed that we had an additional 7 days to do that work. I mean, couldn't that work be run concurrent with other work?
That may be a question I can ask Jerry. 'Cause
Okay, just so we don't add time to it. You know, I mean, there's enough time in the project that I think 7 days, we can be run concurrently while other work is going on.
Evening.
Hey, Jerry.
Hi. So part of the routing of all the lines underground is to remove the 3 poles on Flint Street that are within the excavation for the new building. So in order to get the building excavated to the depth of the foundation, and actually the rammed aggregate piers that are going in this week and next week, we had to get the poles out of the way. So we had to get the conduit put in place. We had to do this early on. We did not know how long it would take utilities to do any of this work either. So we facilitated it, and they're going to reroute their lines for us off of those poles. Since it was done before the foundations were dug for the main building, which is critical path, it affected the critical path. It took both the electrical subcontractor and the general subcontractor to excavate them, place them, and backfill them. So that's the reason for the 7 days.
So you delayed the building construction, so to speak. Okay.
Correct.
Well, that clarifies. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem.
Anybody else have anything? Well, anybody care to make a motion? I'll make a motion. We recommend the City Council passage of Resolution 17-87- authorizing change order number 1 with William Brothers Construction for Phase 1 wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation project.
Second.
Motion by O'Brien, second by Callahan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
The ayes have it.
And that does go on the regular agenda.
That'll have to go on the regular agenda just so I can modify that value.
Yep. Okay, now we'll go to Resolution 17-86-R.
Okay, this is, okay, I got it here. This is basically just giving, I guess it would be Gary, authorization to approve the CMR's contract modification requests up to $100,000, just to keep the project moving along. I mean, if you have to come back for approval for the council for everything over $20,000, we'd never be done. And so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I mean, it was only 3 pages long, the memo. So do you have anything to add to that, Gary?
No, I just tried to highlight it in those bullet points where we're still going to be bringing a change order to you each month for approval. If we get the pluses and minuses to the point where we're going to exceed 100,000, we'll bring the change order to you at the very next CAL meeting that we can get to, even if that's less than a month away. And then basically, again, in order to minimize construction delays, it would authorize staff to approve, basically work on a CO that's approved like tonight, even though council meeting actually isn't for 2 more weeks yet. So
Right. It just pushes it along.
I have a question.
Please.
The reporting process, how do you foresee that? I'm just trying to avoid the case of there's a $99,000 change order every week. Do we get a report saying here's the balance every month, whether or not it's over 100,000 or not?
Yeah, you will get it, whether or not it's over 100,000 or not, like tonight's was 68,000, so no matter what, you'll get a very similar summary like you had tonight.
Okay, good, thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I support this. I think it's important to do. Being in the industry, it moves things along. And we would want to get this done as soon as possible. So any way we can improve upon time, I think we should take advantage of it. Anyone care to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Salvati, second by Wisoto. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Consent agenda?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
And may I make one other comment, please? Sorry. From this time forward, could we possibly put this in the very forefront, like item 4 or 5?
Yes.
Just because I know the gentlemen from Trotter Engineering have been sitting here patiently. And I
Yes.
appreciate Dave pushing this up before the other large discussion in front of us. So it'll just help these guys go home early, have dinner with their families.
We don't need a change order
Thank you.
for overtime.
Just for the sake
We'll
of
do that.
transparency,
Thank
should
you,
that be
guys.
on the regular agenda?
Say that again?
Just for the sake of transparency, should that be on the regular agenda as opposed to consent?
All it takes is one alderman to pull it off the consent agenda, and it sounds like you just did.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
No problem, thank you.
All right, we're going to go back then to item number 6, which is the discussion to continue the direction and regarding to the inclusionary housing policies. Here we go.
Can I ask if maybe you want to do the wage one? Because this may also.
I thought about that. Yeah, we can do that.
Sure.
You don't want to stick around, Wendy? All right, let's go to item number 9, presentation on the non-union wage compensation study.
No, I don't agree, Dave. No, I'm kidding. If I have to be here, everybody has to be here.
All right.
Of course, now we're going to wait for you, but.
Thank you.
Good evening. I want to just quickly go through, as part of the budget, something we have budgeted this year, and part of the goals in HR was to take a look at compensation as well as benefits. And as you know, about 6 months ago or so, we talked about the benefit package and making some changes to our insurance. And the next step is also to look at our wage compensation. From a union perspective, we look at that, of course, during the negotiation sessions. But when we talk about our non-union folks, those wages are set by ordinance, and you guys approve those. Typically, it's been historically, recently, is like about 3 years at a time. And so what we're talking about today is what we want to do is take a review of all the non-union positions, which there are 51 of them. And those are all the positions that are identified in the ordinance. So if you were to open up the ordinance, there's 51 of them. The last outside compensation study that we had completed was actually in the year 2000. Typically, there's, when you talk about wage compensation studies, you can do something internally, and then there's also an external compensation study. And typically, traditionally anyways, usually an organization would complete an external compensation study every 5 to 7 years. So as you can see from the fact that we did it in year 2000, we're a little bit behind on that. When we did complete the study, though, in 2000, we used the PAR group, and it also did job classification. So we did a full, complete analysis of all of our job descriptions, all of the positions themselves, placed them into grades and into our step system. So if you're not familiar, as you know by the ordinance, each position is placed into a grade, and then each grade has steps. we have 7 steps in our system. So when somebody enters the system based on what step they're placed into on an annual basis, they then move through the system until they reach step 7 or the maximum of the step. And then I mentioned as well, we completed internal compensation studies as necessary since the year 2000. So when we took a look at our compensation study, and as you can imagine, going to the outside, potentially it could be a costly endeavor. So one of the things we had talked about was, in talking with Geneva, they were looking at doing something very similar. And so we sat down and talked about how could that work? Is it possible that we could partner together? Does it make sense at all? Are there parts of it that could work together? So with that, we actually found that many of our positions are very similar. So when, while there are small nuances, but overall, like for example, public works street maintenance worker is a public works street maintenance worker in each city, so they're comparable positions. And as well, we have what would be considered comparable communities. Geneva agreed with the 13 comparable communities that we use, and those communities are based on population, EAV, sales tax, and general fund revenue, with the only exception to that being is St. Charles because of close proximity. They don't necessarily meet all 4 of those, but they fall into our group. So there are 13 comparable communities. And then also by us doing this, there's a cost-saving measure associated with that. And I'll talk about phases of the study, but as you can imagine, if I go out to, Batavia goes out to market and says, hey, I want to do collect the data for the survey, and Geneva is doing the exact same thing. So the company is literally doing the exact same process, just that once they get the information, because we have the same comparable communities as well as many of our positions are the same. So we took a look at that and said, hey, can this work for us? So actually we have partnered with Geneva in doing this comp study. So when I go through some of the steps of what some things have been completed and then what's coming up in the near future, we have completed a joint RFQ for the study that was sent out, I believe it was the end of March. We received all of the responses back. We actually received 5 replies, and then we together with Geneva, completed interviews, and from that we selected Gallagher Benefit Services. They were formerly known as Fox Lawson and Associates. Fox Lawson was merged into Gallagher within the last year. So, so that was completed, so we selected the firm, and it was based on many factors, as you can imagine, cost being one of them, but also their expertise and how they go about collecting the data and how they apply the compensation philosophies and how they put that data together. So we looked at all of those, and it really, it was a good agreed upon choice that both Geneva as well as we felt that it was good selection between cost and how they use the data. Additionally, internally, we've reviewed all of our job descriptions. Some time has had elapsed since some of the descriptions had been looked at. So HR staff, we had sent them out to all of the department heads and all of the supervisors. They made their appropriate changes, sent them in, and then we've put them into, making sure we have all the ADA language and all that other stuff that needs to be in the job descriptions. So those have all been updated. And then additionally, I sat down with Geneva and we went through each position, that their positions as well as our positions, and went through each one by one. And from that list, we agreed out of our 51, and I think they had 52, so we're actually very close. 31 of them are comparable positions. So in the RFQ, we had split it out basically into 2 phases. What we would consider phase 1 is really phase 1 that can be completed. It's completed for both communities. And then once the data is collected, and I'll talk about phase 2 in a minute, as you can imagine, it's going to be applied differently to each community and the fact of how our philosophies and what we want our systems to look like. So phase 1 is, like I mentioned, the same for both communities. We reviewed with Gallagher our current pay methodology and our philosophy. We are going to be conducting informational meetings with the employees that are affected on July 31st. So the consultant is going to be coming in, and it's a short presentation, but here's an opportunity for the employees to ask questions so they, hear about, hey, this study's going on, what's going on, how's it going to affect me? So they will answer all of those questions. Additionally, we created a custom survey with collecting the data that we were looking at, not only just purely salaries, but also we weren't able to get too horribly detailed, but we also wanted to collect some benefit data and some additional other information, such as some funding as to our general fund and things like that. So to make sure that when someone replies, we kind of understand, because as you can imagine, one thing that's, when you look at comparable communities, for example, our electric utility, well, Geneva is a comparable community with us, but many of our other comparable communities don't have that function, and so that affects what general revenues look like, other pieces of it, how they roll all of those monies into. We want to make sure we're comparing those things equally. So it was sent out on July 19th to the communities, and we are requesting it back to on August 2nd. As you can imagine, with that built into about a week or so after that date to follow up and nag anyone we need to get the information back from them. We definitely want to get as high of a return, if not 100% return rate for the survey, to make sure all our data is as accurate as possible. And then additionally, where it is possible, we talked with them about collecting some private sector data. So this is something I would say it's a bit unique in the fact of probably in the last 4 or 5 years, public sector has really talked about, hey, is there any value or should we be comparing ourselves to the private sector? As you can imagine, there are many positions that are truly just not comparable. When you talk about trying to think of something right now, but the things that are comparable, for example, an IT director is an IT director. So you can collect some private sector data, salary data on those types of positions. We can't for all of them. For example, a police officer, I guess, would be something that wouldn't necessarily go into, would be able to find something in the private sector. So where they can, they're going to collect that data. That's going to be from reputable survey. They have access to lots of large, like Mercer and things along those lines. They're going to use that information, the geographic information, and collect that information. And they're going to present it separately to us, but we're going to look at that and say, is there a value or a weighting of putting that information into the data that we collect? And then once all of the data is collected, then becomes phase 2. And like I mentioned, phase 2, this is kind of where we split off a little bit, Geneva and as well as ourselves. So for Batavia, they are going to analyze the data, present the findings, and recommend any sort of compensation tools. Currently, like I mentioned, our current system is set up by pay grades and a STEP system, and our system is set solely by you receive increases based solely off of tenure and COLA. Some systems, and maybe at your place that you work now, some systems are set by performance, by merit systems. Maybe it's a combination of the two and so forth. So currently they're going to, based on how our system is set together, they're going to review that. They're going to bring the data back to us. They're also, with their expertise, are going to recommend if there's any other ways of us looking at how we compensate our employees. They're going to make those recommendations. We're going to definitely take a look at those, make it, bring that to you guys as to look at those options. And as you can imagine, any changes, things like that, could come with costs or changes in how it's rolled out. We may not decide to make a change, but they're going to bring all of those options to us, and we'll take a look for it overall. With that, then we'll bring the presentation to the City Council, as well as making an approval of what we are going to do with this information. That will probably be late September into October. And then based on what is approved, there would be an implementation of that. and to be ready. I would foresee that any implementation, we would be looking at the fiscal year of 18, that we would budget into that if there's any changes to the compensation plan as we see it today. The total cost for the study to the city of Batavia is $16,000. Keep in mind, this doesn't include implementation changes if there are any. And of course, once we bring those options or the findings to you, we'll definitely outline the cost of what it would cost if there's salaries to be increased, decreased, whatever the case may be. We will definitely outline that off so you're aware of what that looks like. So I wanted to just, while there's no action needed today, I wanted to kind of bring everybody up to speed of where we are, and just know that as this is coming forward, we'll bring the information to you, kind of go through what we found. I'll be honest, I'm not necessarily sure where we'll end up because it has been such a long time. The good thing as a city, we have consistently been making some COLA adjustments. I know there were some years where there were none, but I think I don't anticipate us being significantly out of whack, I guess you would say, with salaries, but definitely I think it's good to have someone externally look at all the data, analyze it. They're looking at also internal compression issues, any sort of other equity issues, that just to make sure that overall our compensation program is running the way that it should. So I don't know if anyone has any questions right now, but in the next few months, we'll be bringing some more information forward.
Wendy, when was the last time a study was done? I don't remember.
In 2000, so 17 years ago.
17 years. And the 16,000, that's in your budget for this year?
It is, yes, it's in my budget.
And an estimate, I know it's hard to say, but what do you think the savings is by going together at this with Geneva?
Yeah, well, I conducted in my previous place of employment, and we were up to 27 to 30 by doing it ourselves.
So there's not only a nice savings in doing it this way, but just working together with Geneva, I think probably brings some, what's the right word, cohesion, and or just being able to talk with your fellow peers on these ideas.
Absolutely.
It's good.
So Wendy, who gets this information?
You guys will receive of all the information, as well as it'll be available to the employees.
And Gallagher will make recommendations if we're paying too low.
Exactly.
To increase wages. What if we're paying too high?
Typically, they would outline some sort of option of what that would look like, whether it's too high within a pay grade, or if it's, we'll look at both pieces. We'll look at how the compensation system is established, and then also how our employees fall into that system. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of different options. If it's an issue of an employee, there are different things, different choices that as a council we could make, or you can make, is do we, what they call red line, or that person, which currently right now they do, is when they're at step 7, they stay at step 7 for the rest of their careers, or do we do an adjustment, or there's different types of ways that, and wait for that person to catch up into the system, so.
And they'll furnish those options?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And along with the cost of all of that, what that would look like.
Thank you.
Dan?
Just very briefly, and without being specific, are you aware of any outliers, either positive or negative?
No, I don't necessarily think we have any significant outliers. The one thing I had actually shared with Laura before I started is that in the 2 years that I've been here, the one thing I would say is really what I'm looking to hear from Gallagher is, from a recruitment perspective, when it comes to, especially when you're looking at bringing in anyone from a professional, technical, or above level, that our current step system isn't necessarily working the way that, in theory it should work. Because how it should work is somebody comes in at step 1, and then, they come in, you start tomorrow and you come in at step 1, and then you move in 7 years throughout this process. What I'm finding anyways from a recruitment perspective, is that to meet salary demands, we're having to come in earlier, which then in turn causes my opinion anyways, is causes down the road issues where, in 3 to 4 years, somebody's now maxed out for the rest of their 20-year career here.
Yeah,
So,
without being specific, I'm aware that we've done recent hires in the last 2 years where they were hired in at 7,
absolutely, yes,
and they have nowhere to go.
exactly. And that's not ideal for the employee or the city, so.
Okay. Any other? Well, thanks, Wendy. Look forward to it. Okay, so the next item is we're going to jump back now to item number 6, which is discussion to be continued on the direction regarding inclusionary housing policies. Susan, before you take this, I'd like to make a recommendation, just me here, but I'd like to make a recommendation that this is probably going to be a long conversation, and since we do have a quite lengthy executive session, it looks like tonight, I'd suggest that we hold this to maybe 25 minutes, and if it goes longer than that, we carry it over. I think, Laura, you had said a couple weeks ago that the next meeting, first meeting in August, looked like it was going to be kind of light, so.
Well, the August 1st meeting is the mid-year review, but we could always put it on there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Dan?
We spend more than an hour on signs, we can spend more than an hour on affordable housing.
Well, that's what I think too.
Maybe we
and
should just wait and put it on another
Just
night.
table it.
Yeah. table
Rather
it.
than have half a conversation,
Yeah.
and also with a
There's
significant number of
5
aldermen
people.
missing tonight.
Please.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. So, yeah, I
Okay,
would
so-
move we table this.
You're going to move that we table this?
Second.
Okay, got a motion, a second to table it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thanks for sticking around, Chris.
Not going anywhere yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go on then to the next item on the agenda, which is item 10, project status.
Okay, I have a couple of things to share here. Rahat Bari shared with me that the curb and gutter removal has begun on Illinois Route 25 this week. And just a reminder, this is an Illinois Department of Transportation project where they're not only doing resurfacing of the road, but they're also in St. Charles and Batavia, making the crosswalks ADA compliant. Also wanted to report that the Siemens project is on schedule and give you maybe just a little overview of what's happening over there. In accordance with their remediation plan and one approved by the Illinois EPA, they've removed materials from the northern portion of the site, and they're presently working to remove the foundry sand on the southern portion. They anticipate removal of the materials from the southern portion will take about 2 more weeks, weather permitting, and once the area is excavated, then they'll perform the confirmation sampling on that material. This week, they anticipate commencing with an import of clean backfill to place and spread on the northern portion that's already been excavated and tested. And once done, then they'll shift to the backfill activities to the southern excavated tested portion. And when the backfill is completed, expected to take over the course of the next 3 to 4 weeks, then they'll start grading the site and removing the asphalt parking lot that's located to the west of the site. Daily inspections are performed to make sure that their erosion control and their traffic control devices are working properly. And thus far, they have not received any complaints from residents about their construction activity, and nor have we at the city received any resident complaints about their construction activity. So that's good. Let's see. I wanted to give you an update on the strategic planning RFP. We received 5 proposals, and of those, we have scheduled 3 for interviews, working with Lucy and with Scott. And we have scheduled 2 of those interviews for tomorrow, and then another one next Wednesday. So following that, then we hope to narrow the choice down to one who then we'd be able to present to you, because I'd
We're
like
looking
you
to
be able
hire
to-
someone to do
Strategic planning,
strategic planning,
that's part of the budget,
another professional.
yes.
My only concern is we've had a number of these professionals, and I was never really overly impressed, so.
Good point. So noted.
Yeah.
It's true.
I know it's true.
Yeah.
And strategic planning was not a process that we engaged in with the professional that we hired last year, and I think it's unanimous in our disappointment with who we hired last year. It's one of the reasons why I've asked a couple of the aldermen to join me in the selection process, and I think before we make any decision on that professional, to have them also have you meet them so that it's somebody that you're comfortable is somebody who will deliver upon what our expectations are in the process.
And I think can I say something that in the past, I don't know that we've used a professional to help us with implementation and then measurement and seeing how we performed. And we're adding that into this particular search process or criteria, which I think will.
I get that. It's different than what we've done in the past. Like 4 years ago, we had one of these kumbaya moments.
With a professor from Northern?
Yeah, and it was a complete, for my money, a complete failure.
Agreed.
You know, the only one who got to speak was the guy doing it. And so anyway, don't mean to dominate that.
Was the, I know, if I remember correctly, there was still some invoicing that wasn't paid on that. Is that ever been?
It won't be until she delivers on the final report that she was supposed to provide, so. Anything else?
Is that it?
Can I just ask on the 31 construction, who's doing the traffic control?
I don't know. Gary, do you know who is doing the traffic control on the IDOT?
Project and the IDOT project, I don't know who the subcontractor is, but I can find out.
They may want to get off their phone while they're directing traffic.
Come on now.
No. Waving traffic with a stop sign the other way and the guy's talking.
We have IDOT's resident engineer's number.
Here's one of these, Dave.
They may want to know about
Yeah,
that.
that's fine. I will make a note of that first thing tomorrow.
Oops.
Yeah.
Just waiting for somebody to go on one of those. Anything else?
I just want to remind everyone that the Plan Commission public hearing for the Campana project is going to be on August 2nd at 7:00 p.m. and expecting it to take place in this room. In addition, we are looking into making another space available, the Fox Valley Conference Room, where since it's going to be televised on BATV, we will set up a television in that room so that more people can be comfortably seated and watching the meeting and can even have the opportunity to come over here to share their opinions as necessary. So that's another arrangement that we've made. But that's it, unless anybody has any questions?
Question?
Yes.
Someone was asking today, I had reposted the City of Batavia's water main project on Pine Heart area. When is that expected to be finished? They're concerned because school starts in.
Yeah, Hart Road project is probably 10 days. I mean, today was the second day roughly they've been out there digging. It's
Okay.
a quick project.
Okay, great,
Just go
thank
to
you.
the top of the hill and it'll be done.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Alderman Savati?
I know most of us probably have got an email from Civics Plus with the app, the phone app that can plug into the site, which I thought looked really, really interesting.
Yes.
Do we have plans to pursue that?
Yes.
Because there's some functionality in there that I think would be phenomenal for the people in town, and be very, very efficient as far as, they had requests for parking overnight. You could, as far as submit if there's an issue, you could do that all through your phone, and it looked really interesting.
It's something that we're investigating for the 2018 budget. And as you know, in 2018, we have a complete refresh of the website scheduled, and I think it would be nice to dovetail that with maybe whatever the branding project comes up with, the refresh of the website, and we roll out an app. And the sign permit, of course, is a very important component of that. Yes.
Is that it?
One question, Laura. The gas station on Wilson Street, what's going on with that? That's in the new TIF district.
Jeff?
we're working with the owner. They have filed demolition permit for the property, for the building, the canopy, and all the other stuff on the property. We are working with the property owner now as to what the property will be left when it's all demolished. We're having discussion with them about, removing all the pavement, topsoiling it, seeding it until they come forward with a development plan. So we anticipate it moving forward soon.
Thank you.
Lastly, maybe I can report on the art as well. I'm looking for Bruce White's piece for science on the fourth bridge sculpture should be installed next week. And Stonehenge, we're looking for an installation second week in August.
Oh, get out of here.
Seriously.
Serious? You serious, Clark?
Okay, that's it?
Yep.
All right, I need a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of sale of electric power, setting the price of land for sale, and for one item, and setting the price for land for sale for another item.
So
Need a
moved.
motion. Motion by Callahan, second by Cerrone, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, there won't be anything coming out of it.